When you think of ancient Rome, one name echoes through history: Julius Caesar, the brilliant general, the conqueror of Gaul. His legions marched across the known world, their swords carving out an empire. He was a force of nature, a man who wielded power through steel and strategy. But what if I told you there was another man? A man who never conquered a foreign land with an army, yet held Rome itself in the palm of his hand. He didn't command legions in the same way. He commanded something far more insidious: money. His name was Marcus Crassus, and his story is a chilling reminder that the sharpest weapon isn't always a sword. Caesar's power was loud. It was the clash of shields, the roar of a disciplined army, the triumphant parades through the streets of Rome. You could see it, hear it, and feel it. Crassus's power was different. It was quiet. It was the silent transfer of a bag of coins in a dark alley. It was the ink drying on a deed, transferring ownership of a city block from a desperate family to him. It was the whispered promise of political support in the halls of the Senate. While Caesar was busy expanding Rome's borders, Crassus was busy buying its soul, piece by expensive piece. He was the Shadow King, the puppet master pulling strings you never even knew were there. Imagine Rome as a grand stage. Caesar is the lead actor, bathed in the spotlight, delivering dramatic speeches and winning glorious battles. The crowd roars for him. But who built the stage? Who owns the theater? Who paid the other actors to say their lines? That was Crassus. Marcus Crassus wasn't born into the kind of supreme wealth he would later command. His journey started in chaos. He came of age during a brutal Roman civil war, a time when political allegiances could get you killed. His father and brother were executed, and Crassus himself had to flee, hiding out in a cave in Spain. Think about that. The future richest man in Rome, living like a fugitive, his life hanging by a thread. This experience didn't just make him a survivor, it forged him. It taught him that political winds change, alliances are fragile, and the only true security, the only real power, was the kind you could count, the kind that jingles in a pouch. When the political tides turned, Crassus returned to Rome alongside the ruthless dictator Sulla. This was his moment. Sulla initiated the proscriptions, a horrifyingly legal hit list. The state declared hundreds of wealthy Romans enemies, and their property was seized and auctioned off. But this was no ordinary auction. It was a fire sale for the politically connected. Crassus, with his sharp instincts and complete lack of sentimentality, dove in headfirst. He bought up vast estates, silver mines, valuable urban properties for a fraction of their actual worth. While others saw a bloodbath, Crassus saw the opportunity of a lifetime. He was building his foundation on the ruins of other men's lives. This wasn't just about getting rich, it was about learning the mechanics of power. Crassus realized that wealth wasn't just for buying luxuries, it was a tool, a weapon. Crassus's genius wasn't just in acquiring wealth, but in creating it from thin air, or more accurately, from disaster. Rome in the late Republic was a sprawling, chaotic, flammable city. The insulae, massive wooden apartment blocks housing the poor, were notorious fire traps. Fires were terrifyingly common and could consume entire neighborhoods. There was no public fire department. If your home caught fire, you were on your own. You could only watch as your life savings or even your family went up in smoke. It was a crisis. For Crassus, it was a business model. Here's where his cold, calculating brilliance shines. He created a private fire brigade, but they didn't put out fires immediately. That wasn't the Crassus way. When a fire broke out, his brigade raced in but wouldn't throw a bucket of water. Instead, Crassus himself or one of his agents would find the frantic, weeping owner. With flames licking the walls, they would make an offer. Buy the burning building, sometimes the threatened neighboring buildings, for a pittance. Let's dig deeper into this fire brigade because it's a masterclass in predatory capitalism. Crassus assembled a corps of about 500 men. These weren't just bucket carriers, they were architects, they were builders, they were demolition experts. They were a rapid response construction and deconstruction crew. When the alarm for a fire sounded, they didn't just grab water, they grabbed their tools. Their primary mission wasn't saving the building as it was securing the land it stood on for their master. The whole operation was a perfectly choreographed piece of financial theater, with the roaring flames as its dramatic backdrop. Imagine the scene. You're a shopkeeper. You wake to screams and the smell of smoke. The apartment block you live in, the one you own, is being consumed by fire. You rush your family into the street, helpless. Then through the chaos, a well-dressed man approaches you calmly. He represents Marcus Crassus. He explains that your building is a total loss. but out of the goodness of his heart, his master is willing to take the smoldering ruin off your hands. With his fortune secure, Crassus turned his sights to the ultimate prize, political power. He wasn't a charismatic speaker like Cicero or a military hero like Pompey. His path to power would be paved with gold. He became Rome's preeminent political investor, kind of like a venture capitalist for ambitious young men. He understood that in the high-stakes game of Roman politics, most aspiring leaders had talent and ambition, but, well, no money. They needed funds for everything, to host lavish games for the public, to bribe voters to maintain a high-profile lifestyle. Crassus became their silent partner and sometimes not-so-silent partner. His most famous investment was in a young, ambitious, and deeply indebted aristocrat named Gaius Julius Caesar. Caesar was brilliant and popular, but honestly, he was a financial wreck. He spent money he didn't have with reckless abandon, throwing extravagant parties and games to win over the people. He was buried in debt. While other creditors were panicking, Crassus saw potential. He saw a future titan of Rome. So Crassus did something extraordinary. He paid off a huge portion of Caesar's debts. It was a massive gamble, an investment of millions in today's money. By the year 60 BC, Rome was a pressure cooker. Three men stood above all others: Pompey the Great, the celebrated military hero with a loyal army; Julius Caesar, the popular political genius backed by the masses; Crassus, the financial titan, whose wealth was the bedrock of the entire political system. None of them could get what they wanted alone. The Senate feared Pompey's army. The Senate distrusted Caesar's ambition. The Senate resented Crassus's money. They were at a stalemate, so they did the unthinkable. The three rivals decided to stop fighting and start working together. They formed a secret alliance, the First Triumvirate. It wasn't an office, it was a backroom gentleman's agreement. They pooled resources and carved up the Republic for themselves. Together, they would bypass the Senate. They would ignore tradition. They would force their will upon Rome. It was, in effect, a three-man dictatorship. What did Crassus bring to the table? He was the glue and the fuel. Pompey had the soldiers. Caesar had the popular support. Crassus had the cash. He bankrolled their entire operation. Being a ruler of Rome wasn't enough. Crassus had a chip on his shoulder the size of the Capitoline Hill. He was surrounded by military legends. Pompey was the great because of his victories. Caesar was becoming a living myth with his dispatches from Gaul. And what was Crassus? He was the rich guy, the landlord, the guy who paid the bills. In a society that prized military honor, Dignitas Gloria Crassus felt like a junior partner. His vast fortune, which had been his ultimate weapon, now felt like a source of shame. He needed a war, he needed his own triumph. His eyes turned east, to the mysterious and wealthy Parthian Empire. Located in modern-day Iran, Iraq, Parthia was the one major power that Rome had yet to challenge. It was rumored to be fabulously rich, a land of silk gold. For Crassus, it was the perfect target. A victory over Parthia would bring unimaginable new wealth into his coffers, and the one thing his money couldn't buy: military glory. He would be Crassus the Great, a conqueror to rival Alexander. The Parthian campaign was a disaster from the very start. Crassus marched his legions deep into the Mesopotamian desert, a flat, sun-scorched wasteland utterly alien to his soldiers. The Parthian strategy was brutally effective. They refused to engage in a pitched battle where the Roman heavy infantry would have the advantage. Instead, they used their legendary horse archers. These mounted warriors would ride in, unleash a storm of arrows, then retreat before the legions could respond. A tactic of 1,000 cuts, demoralizing and draining the Roman army under the relentless desert sun. Crassus's legions were trapped. They formed their famous testudo, the tortoise formation with shields locked together. But Parthian arrows pierced the shields. For hours the Romans huddled and endured the onslaught, dying slowly from arrow wounds, heat stroke, and thirst. Crassus, the brilliant businessman, was a helpless general. According to Cassius Dio, they poured molten gold down his throat. "Sate yourself now with the metal you have so long coveted," they jeered at his severed head. The story of Marcus Crassus is a chilling exploration of ambition and greed. He was a man who truly knew the price of everything but ultimately understood the value of nothing. His life demonstrates the incredible power that wealth can grant. It bought him a city, it bought him political power, it bought him a place alongside the greatest men of his age. But his downfall reveals the limits of wealth. Money can buy you a throne, but not save you from fatal flaws. What do you think? Brilliant innovator or greedy monster? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe for more stories of legendary figures and lost fortunes. there are always more mysteries to uncover.